30 people.
America, we just uncovered what might be one of the most sophisticated smuggling operations we'd ever seen. Federal agents intercepted 30 Chinese nationals and 370 pounds of cocaine in a single operation.
Up in custody after a major drug bust off the coast of Palm Beach County. It includes more than 200 pounds of cocaine.
The St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office uncovered what they say is a smuggling operation involving more than 30 people. Several law enforcement agencies worked together after learning a group of men was planning to travel to the Bahamas to pick up illegal drugs and, quote, smuggle undocumented immigrants into the U.S.
ICE just broke up a Chinese cartel operation in Florida, grabbing 370 pounds of cocaine and taking 30 people into custody. If you've got a streaming subscription, you might not need it. ICE just broadcast real-time cartel chaos off Florida's shore. Turns out crime skips no weekends, and neither do federal agents. And that's exactly where this story kicks off. While most folks were soaking up a typical Florida weekend of sand, sun, and overpriced iced coffee, federal teams were quietly dismantling what proved to be one of the most intricate smuggling rings ever found off the Sunshine State's coast. 4 migrant boats stopped, dozens of arrests, hundreds of pounds of cocaine seized, and behind it, an international network operating like a franchised arm of organized crime. A screenwriter might call it unbelievable.
It all started when St. Lucie County Sheriff investigators say the group of men rented an Airbnb in Fort Pierce, soon finding this involved 3 boats, a counter-surveillance team, and 38 people.
It began when St. Lucie County Sheriff investigators say a group of men rented an Airbnb in Fort Pierce, soon learning this involved 3 boats, a counter-surveillance team, and 38 people. The operation surfaced when the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, with federal partners, spotted something off in Fort Pierce, a quiet seaside town where crime is usually a parking ticket, not an international plot. A group of men booked an Airbnb.
3 boats departed from the Fort Pierce Inlet. St. Lucie County Sheriff investigators, along with several state and federal agencies, were ready and waiting for their return.
Nothing strange at first, but that seemingly routine reservation doubled as the nerve center for a cross-border trafficking scheme. These weren't spring breakers chasing tan lines. They were coordinating boats, moving money, and charting routes stretching from China through the Caribbean and straight into Florida's coast. 3 boats pushed out from the Fort Pierce Inlet. St. Lucie County Sheriff investigators, alongside multiple state and federal agencies, were set and waiting for them to come back. The blueprint was audacious: travel to the Bahamas posing as tourists, pick up Chinese nationals seeking to slip into the U.S., scoop up large loads of cocaine at the same time, then shuttle both people and product into Florida waters before anyone caught on.
Their plans began just 1 day prior when investigators say they learned a group of men had rented an Airbnb in Fort Pierce, planning to, quote, travel to the Bahamas to retrieve drugs and smuggle undocumented immigrants into the United States.
In short, human trafficking fused with drug smuggling. A tidy little business model. Each passenger was paying up to $35,000 for the journey, as if the cartel offered expedited shipping. Crime, but with express delivery. Plans kicked off just a day earlier, when investigators say they learned a group of men had rented an Airbnb in Fort Pierce and were planning to travel to the Bahamas to retrieve drugs and smuggle undocumented immigrants into the United States. The morning of the bust looked routine.
They learned all 3 boats would be returning from the Bahamas to the inlet, so with help from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Air and Marine Operations, Homeland Security, Florida Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida Highway Patrol, they set their plans in
5:30 a.m. at the Fort Pierce Inlet, the kind of pastel sunrise that belongs on a postcard. Only this time, federal agents watched every ripple. They had trailed the smugglers for weeks, reading encrypted chatter, following the money, and coordinating across agencies. When the 3 boats departed the Bahamas, law enforcement was already staged. 2 vessels were stopped fast. The 3rd tried to bolt, showing these crews weren't just moving drugs, they were executing a playbook. Alternate routes, counter-surveillance, lookout teams planted along the beaches.
Board, we're told, is a total of 370 pounds of cocaine and 30 Chinese nationals, including 2 children, all who officials say are believed to be undocumented.
Not amateur hour, this was tactical crime. They'd learned all 3 boats would be coming back from the Bahamas to the inlet. So with assistance from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, Air and Marine Operations, Homeland Security, Florida Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida Highway Patrol, they put the plan into motion. When agents moved in, the scene was stunning. 30 Chinese nationals, including 2 children, crammed onto overcrowded boats with 5 Bahamian accomplices and 370 pounds of cocaine. That's
Sheriff Richard Del Toro writing, "We won't tolerate criminals using our shores as their pathway. Our county will not be a gateway for criminal enterprises. I'm proud of the teamwork and tenacity shown by all the local, state, and federal agencies."
It's roughly 168 kilograms for anyone keeping track, enough to make the eyebrows arch nationwide. And while the drugs grab attention, the human piece was equally grim. The 2 children were used as literal human shields by the smugglers. This wasn't about families chasing the American dream. It was business, pure and cold. Paying customers of a criminal enterprise, each sold a passage that was never guaranteed.
Representative for the Coast Guard also reacting, writing, "The Coast Guard continues to safeguard our borders with our state, federal, and international partners to stop illegal maritime migration voyages and to prevent the unnecessary loss of life at sea."
On board, we're told, is a total of 370 pounds of cocaine and 30 Chinese nationals, including 2 children, all of whom, officials say, are believed to be undocumented. Sheriff Richard Del Toro didn't mince words. Facing reporters, he said his county won't be a gateway for organized crime. "We will not allow criminals to use our shores as their pathway." And this wasn't just talk. Del Toro had repaired local partnerships that had frayed years ago.
Welcome back. A major drug bust for the Honolulu-based Coast Guard cutter Midget. The crew recently seized more than 21,000 pounds of cocaine from 4 vessels off Mexico and Central America.
His office was working shoulder to shoulder with the DA, Homeland Security, Customs, and Border Protection. But here's where it gets more interesting. This wasn't a one-off. The bust revealed a broader shift in how smugglers operate. Sheriff Richard Del Toro wrote that, "We won't tolerate criminals using our shores as their pathway," adding the county will not serve as a gateway for criminal enterprises and praising the teamwork and tenacity of local, state, and federal agencies. And with the southern land border under heavy surveillance and political scrutiny, cartels are pivoting. They're shifting offshore, leveraging Florida's vast coastline and the looser immigration policies in nearby areas like the Bahamas. Why gamble on the Texas desert when you can hop a flight to Nassau, take a short boat ride, and slip into Florida with a fraction of the heat?
Value of more than $156 million. 19 suspected drug smugglers were also taken into custody.
Its crimes work smarter, not harder. The Coast Guard and even Florida Fish and Wildlife, everyone was in and it worked. Coordination was the quiet advantage that took this international ring down. A Coast Guard representative responded in writing, "The Coast Guard continues to safeguard the borders with state, federal, and international partners to stop illegal maritime migration voyages and prevent the unnecessary loss of life at sea." The numbers back it up. In July 2024, U.S. authorities logged 453 land-based drug seizures. By July 2025, that figure had fallen to just 33. Meanwhile, maritime cases have soared, over 1,000 cases last year, and by mid-2025, more than 800 already on the books. Smugglers are adapting, and the ocean is now their frontier. Think Wild West, only with speedboats and encrypted apps. Welcome back. A major drug bust for the Honolulu-based Coast Guard cutter, __. The crew recently seized more than 21,000 pounds of cocaine from 4 vessels off Mexico and Central America.
Anyone attempting to enter the United States illegally by sea will be interdicted and repatriated to their country of origin or departure.
What made this operation alarming wasn't just the volume, it was the sophistication. Traffickers used modern tech and legitimate services like Airbnb as cover. They weren't ducking into back alleys. They were blending into the same platforms families book for vacations. Encrypted group chats replaced smoky backroom meetings. Counter-surveillance teams used beach binoculars instead of burner phones. They structured themselves like a company: logistics, payment systems, global coordination. Picture a cartel with a project manager and calendar invites. That's what investigators stepped into. The drugs carry an estimated value of more than $156 million.
Every partner, every resource available to keep those dangerous networks out of our neighborhood and our country. This success is about partnerships across federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies.
19 suspected drug smugglers were taken into custody as well. If that isn't unsettling enough, remember this entire operation hid in plain sight. Regular Floridians were fishing off the pier, walking dogs, and sipping margaritas on decks just a few hundred yards from an international smuggling hub. The criminals even posted lookouts on beaches, posing as tourists while feeding updates to partners offshore. When agents moved, it wasn't just about arrests. It exposed how seamlessly crime had woven into everyday life. The Coast Guard's message afterward was blunt. Anyone trying to enter the United States illegally by sea will be intercepted and deported. No exceptions. And they meant it. Every single migrant caught in the Florida bust is now being sent back to China, broke and betrayed by the very smugglers they paid. It's a harsh reminder that in these global trafficking schemes, the victims often end up footing the bill. Anyone attempting to enter the United States illegally by sea will be interdicted and repatriated to their country of origin or departure. But while the captured migrants face deportation, the real work for federal agents is just beginning. The masterminds linking China, the Caribbean, and the U.S. are still being hunted. IC and Homeland Security are digging into the financial networks, tracing payments, and identifying accomplices. Because this operation didn't just move people and cocaine, it exposed a playbook likely being replicated by other networks around the globe. Every partner, every resource we can bring to keep those dangerous networks out of our neighborhood and our country. This success comes from partnerships across federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. Still, there's a silver lining. This Florida operation showed that law enforcement can adapt too. For years, agencies worked in silos, but this time, everyone from local deputies to federal task forces was on the same page. Intelligence was shared, operations were synchronized, and when it mattered, they hit hard. In one coordinated strike, they dismantled a network that spanned oceans.